now 5+ years. He does not have one bill at all where he is the prime sponsor that is addressing affordability. Not one that has passed and become law. So when we think about what's at stake right now, to actually reduce your costs and raise your wages, I'm actually giving people a vision around that on our Bronx plan, and he's not.
You mentioned Mr. Mamdani and the mayor. He has already endorsed a few races, yours not being one of them yet. Do you want his endorsement?
Of course, and it's one of the many reasons we were excited to cross-endorse him in the primary and the opportunities that's there. Look, he's a transformational figure, and the excitement that exists right there. And when people decide in New York 15, you have a choice. You have someone in me who actively supported Mayor Mamdani to make sure he was elected and supported throughout the campaign. You have someone in Richie Torres who not only went against him in endorsing Andrew Cuomo, but then called the challengers against him the Mickey Mouse Party. Well, no, we're very, very, very clear. We have something we're going to show in the community. And if you want someone who's an ally to Mayor Mamdani, my name is Michael Blake.
Let me talk about affordability just one more time here with a discussion about taxing the rich, right? I know it's a state issue or a city issue, but that's something Mayor Mamdani wants to do. Would you support a taxing of the rich to pay for some of the things to make things more affordable?
We need to. And when we think about it, it's a resource allocation. At the end of the day, when we think about a budget being a moral document, then we have to be clear that we have to pay for the things that we deserve. We deserve better education. We deserve more affordable housing. We deserve our children to be protected. We deserve our immigrants to be protected in our communities. In order to pay for these things, yes, we should tax the rich and make it very clear, as opposed to Richie Torres, who just voted on a bill that would increase funding in terms of what's going on to Israel, in particular the government itself, that actually would have restrictions to Palestinians and actually would not protect our immigrants. So when we think about a budget being a moral document, taxing the rich gives us the opportunity to pay for the bills and make sure that the poorest congressional district in the country, Dan, actually supported in a way that we have not been.
You're targeting Mr. Torres and his support of Israel as something to hold against him, tying him to AIPAC. New York Post reports that you took down pro-Israel posts and attended AIPAC events from 2014 to 2017. So did you have a change of heart when it came to AIPAC?
Absolutely. And look, I think
so
many
you admit
people
that
don't.
You went to those events in 2014 and 2017.
I did, and let me be very clear. I'm an ordained reverend who says very clearly that Jesus was a Palestinian Jew, and I understand at the time there were things I did not know. Many people won't be honest with themselves. There's propaganda given to you at AIPAC that you don't realize, and then you realize it afterwards. You have to make a change. When you see what is happening and that there's a genocide that is occurring, when you see what's going on in terms of the destruction and not supporting the community, yes, things have changed, and I've learned from that. And I have to be willing to acknowledge that, and any good leader will be able to communicate that. When we think about where we're at right now, also is the personal dynamic. One of the individuals that were killed, World Central Kitchen worker, helped us in the Bronx. It becomes very personal for us when you see a community not standing up in a real way. Now, let me be very clear. We have to make sure that we're addressing, yes, anti-Semitism and Muslim hate. We have to make sure we're standing up for all of our collective communities. But in the same way someone should not call someone anti-American for standing up against Donald Trump, standing against what's going on in Bibi Netanyahu does not make you anti-Israel and anti-Semitic.
I don't mean to bring up the New York Post again, but they did have an article about rabbis in the Bronx who support Richie Torres and accused you of stoking anti-Semitism in your campaign kickoff video, which you apologized for in that video. Was it a mistake, and how do you address some of the anti-Semitism claims that are out there? Being
critical of a government does not make you anti-Israel and anti-Semitic. And individuals have to make that collective decision. Now, we have to be very clear on where do we stand. How do we make sure that our synagogues, our masjids, and our churches are safe havens against the rise that's happening in our communities? How do we also say at the same time that you have a humanitarian crisis and that we're not going to be silent about what's going on to the Palestinians? At the same time, that we're not going to allow for a rise in anti-Semitism. You can address all at the same time. And I think too often what's happening is that we're being pitted against each other and saying you have to just take one side and ignore everyone else. When we think about where Richie has stood, Richie will not acknowledge all communities. That's his own acknowledgement, that's his own rhetoric, that's his own decisions. And I'm saying very clearly, to represent the Bronx, you have to represent everyone.
And where do you see yourself in terms of the Democratic spectrum? And the reason I ask this is because there's been so much talk lately with what exactly a Democratic Party or a Democrat stands for. If you're far left, if you're moderate, Mamdani is a Democratic socialist. So where do you fall on that spectrum?
Well, you know, we always say in black community, not all skin folk are kinfolk, and so not all Democrats are being real Democrats right now. So let's be clear about this. There's a major difference between me and Richie Torres.